We heard yesterday that the case of Mary Boyle, who was a young child, she's been missing since, believe it or not, March 1977, that the case is destined to be reopened by the Gardaí. One particular journalist has followed this case for quite a long time and has been at the forefront of getting answers for the family and indeed for the nation, is investigative journalist Gemma O'Doherty, who's made a documentary which is available on YouTube, 1 hour 23 minutes of the background to the disappearance of Mary Boyle. You're very welcome, Gemma. Nice to talk to you.
Hello, Declan.
Good morning. And just for people who don't know, just to remind us about Mary Boyle, please.
Well, Mary Boyle is Ireland's longest and youngest missing person. She vanished on a very remote farm in Donegal near Ballyshannon in March 1977, the day after St. Patrick's Day. And her uncle claimed that she had followed him across very isolated fields. Now, through the years, the Gardaí and certain elements within the media have promoted a theory that Mary was abducted by a stranger. But her identical twin sister and a number of the first senior detectives on the scene would dispute that strongly. It is their belief that she was murdered by somebody known to her. And most disturbingly, they believe that she was sexually assaulted before her death.
And why was that aspect not fully investigated?
Well, we have a serious issue in our country with corruption. This is a highly corrupt case. There are allegations of political interference. These allegations are being made by some of the first officers on the scene who state that a phone call was made to Ballyshannon Garda Station by a politician in the days after the child's murder, requesting that the chief suspect not be arrested, and he never has been.
Right. Many people...
I'd like to make reference, if possible, to the events of yesterday, which are extremely serious on behalf of An Garda Síochána. There was quite a contrived media campaign around this announcement yesterday that there is to be a cold case probe into this. Now, this follows a so-called review of the case which began in 2011 and resulted in the arrest of a man who had nothing to do with the murder, an individual from Sligo called Brian McMahon. So that review went on for about 5 years, and now we have another so-called review, and Doherty's solicitors were not contacted about this. We were told nothing about it. Certain elements within the media that would be very close to the Gardaí were informed about it. And really, you know, at this stage in Donegal, they say the stones in the street know what happened to that child. There's no need for taxpayers' money to be spent on yet another long review. The killer needs to be removed from the streets and prosecuted immediately. And we would say that all of those who have shielded him through the years, including members of our police force, need to be brought to justice also.
And would the, say, cover-up, we call it a 39 years remove, still be as strong today? It might seem surprising that the same amount of weight would be given to a phone call 39 years ago as would perhaps be today. Well,
that's probably been one of the most disturbing things for the public to absorb. Those of us who are working in the field of investigative journalism, exploring these unsolved cases, have found that the ability of the Gardaí to cover up murders is as strong today as it was back in the 70s. If anything, it is more serious today because they have the ability to take members of the media on board. And the public are being so terribly misled on many of these stories. One that I've covered extensively is that of the case of Father Niall Malloy, who was murdered in 1985 in County Offaly. Now that was described in Leinster House as the biggest cover-up in the history of the state. And again, there are political connections involved in that case. But yet, the public haven't been told about that by the media. Myself and a couple of other journalists pursued it. But these cases are being kept from the public. And in a democracy, we cannot have a situation like that. We need a free press. We need journalists to be able to go about and do their business, especially when they're reporting on the most serious crime of all, murder, the taking of a life, a human life.
Since the case you mentioned, Niall Malloy and Mary Boyle, I mean, the top people in charge in the Garda Síochána, including the Commissioner, have all changed. So it's serious to say that they were following what maybe previous incumbents did. Would you not have more faith in maybe the new broom that seems to be coming into effect in the Gardaí?
Absolutely not. I mean, we've seen the way Commissioner Noreen O'Sullivan has handled Garda whistleblowers. We have been utterly disillusioned with her in her handling of this case. Anne Doherty, Mary Boyle's identical twin, has called for her resignation. I would support that. She should stand down immediately. She is not a suitable person to be leading our police force. We cannot have a situation where we have individuals who have murdered children being allowed to avoid prosecution because of their political connections. And that situation is ongoing in our country at the moment. And those whose job it is to uphold law and order, to protect our children, to protect all of us, we pay them to do that on our behalf. And they are not doing that. And they're wasting our money as well when they launch these reviews that go on for years and years, when they know, when they have the evidence there. In this case, we know what happened to Mary. They know what happened to Mary.
And of course,
but they continue to mislead the public and to put up a pretense, really. And it's unacceptable. But the one thing I will say, Declan, is that I really believe the public see through all of this. They know that elements within the media are aligned to the Gardaí and are afraid of the Gardaí and are afraid of the political establishment. They know they're not being told the full story. And that is why journalists like me are turning to the new media, which cuts out the middleman that would try to silence us, so that we can make a direct connection with the public and tell them about the scandals that are going on in our country. And that's why I released my documentary on YouTube. In the course of a week, it's had more than 80,000 views. That has been a phenomenal response. And that shows to me that the public do want to know about these appalling cases, however stomach-churning they may be for them. The public do want to know, the public have a right to know, and we must tell them.
You say there is a person who murdered somebody. Yes, probably. And the evidence that you say is overwhelming has not been tested as yet in court. Do you think this will be tested at some future date? And is there any politicians that are on your side with this and want to progress it in some way?
I would have no confidence in the criminal justice system to prosecute the killer of Mary Boyle and those who have shielded him for 40 years. My priority as a journalist on behalf of Anne Doherty, Mary Boyle's twin, and also Margot O'Donnell, who has fought valiantly for 40 years trying to find Mary's remains, that is our priority now. Mary's remains must be returned to Anne Doherty. She must be given the dignity of a decent burial. As for the killer, I have no control over that situation, but I have absolutely no confidence. If there was a will there, the individual has made statements that don't make sense. Other individuals close to the case have made contradictory statements. A proper police force would have been able to bring those people to justice long ago. And the fact that here we are 40 years on talking about this case, I would have no confidence whatsoever. But certainly in the mood in Donegal at the moment is one of extreme anger about this. And those people know what they have done, and really we don't know how they can live with themselves for what they have done to a little child, 6 years of age, whose life was ahead of her and taken so cruelly. Political support, we've been in and out of the Dáil in the course of the last year. Anne Doherty and her solicitor Margot O'Donnell have met Enda Kenny. We've met numerous TDs, senators, and we've been to the Northern Ireland Parliament in Stormont. We've been to Washington, where we met members of Congress. We've been to Brussels, where we met all of the Irish MEPs, pleading for justice for this child, pleading for it, because that's what you have to do in Ireland to try and get justice. You have to go abroad. We haven't had success so far. We don't know what more we can do. But we cannot have a situation where a 6-year-old remains are dumped on a bog in Donegal. We cannot have that situation. So the child's remains must be given back to Anne Doherty, and the person who took them almost 40 years ago must do that now.
And people can access on YouTube your documentary. What's the name? How would they find it?
Yes, it's called Mary Boyle, The Untold Story. And it's available for free on YouTube. And I'd be delighted that they would watch it. And they can make their own mind up.
Gemma O'Doherty, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you. Thank you. Gemma O'Doherty, investigative journalist, following that case, the disappearance of Mary Boyle back in 1977. All right, 087 77 11 103. And of course, nobody has been before the court or found guilty about that as yet. Now then, who is the friend of Frankie? Sister Sledge. Sister Sledge, pair of tickets for Sharon Doyle of Newborn in Rathdrum. Sharon Doyle, you're going to Punchestown, enjoy Lionel Richie.